seem similar, but the candidate we're looking for must have supernatural abilities above and beyond the natural man. All qualified candidates, please send your resume to Lucifer Incorporated, 666 Demon Gates Lane, Hades Hell, 66666, or email to lucifer@deception.com. The coming world leader, commonly known as the Antichrist, has 33 titles in the Old Testament and 13 in the New Testament. One of these, the Prince that shall come, comes from Daniel chapter 9 verses 26 and 27, in which the people of the Prince that shall come would destroy the city and the sanctuary. The fulfillment occurred in history when the Roman legions under Titus Vespasian destroyed Jerusalem and the temple in 70 AD. This reference to the Romans in Daniel 9 verse 26 is one of the several reasons why most Bible scholars view the future prince that shall come as coming out of a revived Roman Empire. The Bible predicts two one-world leaders, or Antichrist, who will rule the entire world. From Revelation chapter 13 and Daniel chapter 7 verse 8, 11, and 23, we find that one will be the main leader, or the beast, while the other the false prophet, who will perform miracles and force the world to worship the beast and his image. The false prophet, whose number is 666, will enforce the mark, which could be a tattoo or computer chip or some other new type of technology. It could even be enacted through some type of supernatural means, since they will be performing miracles. The Antichrist, or beast as he will become to be known, goes by many titles. The Old Testament names are Adversary, Assyrian, Man of bloodshed and deceit, Branch of the Terrible One, Chief Prince, Crooked Serpent, Cruel One, Destroyer of Nations, Enemy, Worthless Shepherd, King of Princes, Little Horn, Mighty Man, Prince that shall come, Profane and wicked Prince of Israel, Serpent, Son of the Dawn, the Destroyer, Vile and Despicable One, Wicked One, Willful King. New Testament names: Man of Lawlessness, Son of Perdition, One bringing signs and wonders, One who comes in his own name, Antichrist, Pseudo-Christ, the Beast, Lawless One, Beast from the sea, One whose fatal wound will heal, and Vine of the earth. Here is wisdom. Let him who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for the number is that of a man, and his number is 666. Revelation chapter 13, verse 18. In the book of Revelation, an angel of God is revealing more of the mystery of the end times to the Apostle John while he is captive on the Isle of Patmos. Here we learn of Satan's master plan of introducing a false Messiah, the first beast, the Antichrist, and a false prophet, the second beast, and finally an idol to a false god, Satan. In the first verse of chapter 13, the Apostle John sees a vision of Satan standing on a seashore, possibly that of the Mediterranean Sea. The first beast is the person classically known as the Antichrist, and he wears the crowns of his unholy father. And the dragon stood on the sand of the seashore. Then I saw a beast coming up out of the sea, having 10 horns and 7 heads, and on his horns were 10 diadems, and on his heads were blasphemous names. Revelation chapter 13, verse 1. In the book of Daniel we get further clarification from an angel of God regarding a vision of 4 beasts that had come to Daniel the prophet. The fourth kingdom was ancient Rome from the time of Christ. In the last days, the first beast, who is the Antichrist, who is the little horn of Daniel chapter 7, verse 8, arises out of the old Roman Empire. But which part of the old Roman Empire? In AD 284, the Emperor Diocletian restored the government to the empire after the near anarchy of the 3rd century. He then divided the empire into 2 legs, just as Daniel had predicted when he interpreted Nebuchadnezzar's dream 9 centuries earlier. His reorganization of the fiscal, administrative, and military machinery of the empire temporarily shored up the decaying empire in the west and laid the foundation for the forthcoming Byzantine Empire of the East. In AD 312, the Emperor Constantine relocated the capital of the empire to its eastern leg, to Byzantium, naming it Constantinople, the New Rome. After Constantine's death in 395, Emperor Theodosius divided the empire between his 2 sons, and it was never again reunited. It was Theodosius who made Christianity the sole religion of the empire, and subsequently Constantinople assumed preeminence over the West. In the late 5th century, the western leg began to disintegrate, but the eastern leg, commonly dubbed the Byzantine Empire, endured until 1453, when it was finally overrun by the Muslims. There are a number of biblical texts that strongly suggest that the coming world leader, commonly called the Antichrist, will emerge from the region of the eastern leg of the Roman Empire, and that profoundly impacts our prophetic perspectives. When Alexander the Great died, his 4 generals divided up the empire, which reached eastward even to India. Cassander took Macedonia and Greece. Lysimachus took Asia Minor and Thrace. Seleucus took over Syria, Babylon, and the east, and Ptolemy took over Egypt. Since Israel was caught between the territories of Seleucus and Ptolemy, it subsequently was a buffer zone between these 2 rivals. Daniel chapter 11 details the struggle between the Seleucid Empire, the king of the north, and Ptolemy's, the king of the south. Daniel chapter 11, verses 36 through 40, focus on Antiochus Epiphanes, whose desecration of the temple and placing a pagan idol in the Holy of Holies, the abomination of desolation, triggered the Maccabean revolt that threw off the yoke of the Seleucid Empire. 3 years after the infamous desecration, the Israelites rededicated the temple, and this event is celebrated to this day on the 25th of Kislev as Hanukkah. 2 centuries later, when 4 disciples came to Jesus for a confidential briefing on his second coming, Jesus referred to a repeat of that historical event, the abomination of desolation, as the key to end-time prophecy. A similar event will trigger the climatic 3.5-year period that Jesus himself labeled as the Great Tribulation. It would seem, taking the Daniel chapter 11 as a whole, that the final world leader will emerge from this region, which comprised the Seleucid Empire, rather than from the western regions as commonly assumed. It is interesting to note that the prophet Micah refers to this final conqueror as the Assyrian. And this one shall be the peace, when the Assyrian shall come into our land, and when he shall tread into our palaces. Then shall we raise against him 7 shepherds and 8 principal men, and they shall waste the land of Assyria with the sword, and the land of Nimrod in the entrances thereof. Thus shall he deliver us from the Assyrian, when he cometh into our land, and when he treadeth within our borders. Micah chapter 5, verses 5 and 6. Isaiah and Ezekiel also employ this very term. The Assyrian Empire preceded the Babylonian Empire by several centuries. This empire embraced the region we know today as Syria and Iraq. The first world dictator was Nimrod, whose name means "we rebel," who ruled from Babylon. It is interesting to note that Micah also refers to this as the land of Nimrod. Could it be that the final world dictator will be, in some sense, a return of Nimrod? This may add an additional dimension to the mystery surrounding the future of Babylon. Is it just used as a symbol, or will Babylon literally rise to prominence on the banks of the Euphrates once again? Isaiah and Jeremiah clearly describe a destruction of Babylon that has never happened yet. Zechariah seems to hold the key. The Bible profiles man's history in terms of 7 major empires. And there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his heads. Revelation chapter 12, verse 3. These would appear to be Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, Persia, Greece, and Rome, the last one in 2 phases, ancient Rome phase 1, and the final re-emergent revival of the Roman Empire, phase 2. This perspective derives from a careful study of Daniel 2 and 7, which profiles the times of the Gentiles, from Babylon until God establishes his own kingdom, with the Messiah reigning as King of Kings. In both Daniel 2 and 7, we see 4 major kingdoms: Babylon, Persian, Greece, and Rome, with a 4th one fragmenting, but then ultimately re-emerging in the last days. Strangely, the prophecies of Daniel provide a surprising amount of detail concerning both Greece and Rome, with both chapters 7 and 8 highlighting a little horn that emerges among the prominent 10 horns that will dominate the final scenario. This little horn, an 11th in effect, is another designation for the climactic world leader we commonly call the Antichrist. And there are 7 kings, 5 are fallen, and 1 is, and the other is not yet come, and when he cometh, he must continue a short space. Revelation chapter 17, verse 10. The 5 are fallen would seem to refer to the 5 kingdoms that had preceded John's day: Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, Persia, and Greece. The 1 is would seem to be the one existing when John was writing. That would be Rome in its first phase. The other is not yet come would seem to point to that final world empire that will be taken over by the 11th horn. And the beast that was, and is not, even he is the 8th, and is one of the 7, and goeth into perdition. Revelation chapter 17, verse 11. It would seem that this final 8th empire is the one that was, and is not, and is yet among the list of 7. The only empire among the 7 that doesn't exist in some form today is Assyria. It strangely disappeared from history until the sensational discoveries of Henry